Greetings! Welcome to Nina's World. This podcast provides a short respite from the trials and tribulations of everyday life. We're going to step back in time to the 1950s and 60s. And now, our story. Nina feels confused. Nina feels shame. Nina doesn't understand why. Wait till I tell my teacher. It often happened that people asked Nina the most curious questions when they heard how many children were in her family. Gee, do you remember all their names? Nina mused at the stupendous idiocy of such a question. Of course she knew their names. They were her sisters and brothers. Did the inquisitor doubt Nina's mental acuity? She was willing to forgive the ignoramus until he had a follow-up question. Do you have a washing machine? Nina was tempted to retort that they pounded their clothes on the rocks by the creek that ran past the back of their yard, but decided not to answer at all. Nina's time in third grade was not shaping up as a banner year. Nina knew Mrs. Wagner, her teacher last year in second grade, liked her because she would smile, sometimes let Nina pick the next person to read aloud, and made her feel, Nina thought about it. Yes, made her feel loved. In truth, Mrs. Wagner was kind to all the students, and they were devastated when her husband was transferred and she went with him. Mrs. Wagner made being a teacher in the classroom with a bunch of second graders seem like it was the only place she wanted to be. Don't get Nina started on Mrs. Rome, who finished out their school year. Mrs. Rome acted like a drill sergeant, ordering the second graders in a harsh, clipped voice. Everyone was afraid. One girl burst into tears to hear such things. No one wanted to raise a hand to ask a question, and no one wanted to be called upon. Second grade suddenly stopped being fun. There was a lot of things that Nina thought about as she meandered to school with her siblings. After a difficult summer, when Nina was sick, she had been eager to return to school. Third grade had its good points, like Nina learning to play the violin, but there had been too many days when Nina simply had to, finish out the school day. Halloween, Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, Christmas, and winter break, all the good stuff, was now over, and it would be another 6 weeks before Valentine's Day would arrive. Nina knew she wouldn't get many Valentines from boys because boys were, boys. She might get some from a few of her girlfriends. January ended with a yawn. Then something special happened. It was such happy news. Nina was excited. She was eager to tell her friends and even her teacher. Nina didn't even care that it was cold or that it had been a long walk to school. When she arrived, she wanted to be the first in line. As other kids played wall ball or tag that morning, Nina was all business, bursting with sunshine and eager to tell Miss Johnson the news. The buzzer buzzed and students headed for their class lines. Nina knew that her news would make Miss Johnson smile and maybe even say something nice to her. As her classmates entered the room, placed their lunches and coats in the cloakroom, Nina positioned herself near Miss Johnson's desk. Other children also had things to tell the teacher or notes to give her from their parents, so Nina, uncharacteristically, waited patiently. She wanted all of Miss Johnson's attention. Nina's rouged cheeks weren't from the cold, but from sheer joy. Her teacher looked up from her roll book. Yes, Nina, it's time to sit down. What do you want? Nina took an unnecessary deep breath. "Guess what, Miss Johnson? My mommy had a baby girl." A pause. Tight lips. Miss Johnson said, "Some people don't know when to stop." Then stood and walked to the front of the room. Nina was unable to move, unable to think, even unable to burst into hot, stinging tears that threatened to expose her confusion. What did Miss Johnson mean? Stop. Stop what? Whatever it was, Nina knew it wasn't good. "Take your seats, boys and girls. Do it now," her teacher announced from the front of the classroom. Nina felt hot jelly bubbling inside, somehow unfastened her feet from the floor, wandered past Claire's desk. "What's wrong, Nina?" Nina didn't answer. Nina hadn't even heard her friend's question. Nina sat down as she was told. Sat. Stood for the pledge. Sat for the Lord's Prayer. Was quiet the mandatory minute. Was quiet the rest of the morning. Language arts rolled by, and Nina was glad that her reading group only had seat work. Nina circled the soft C words in her workbook, looked at the pages she was supposed to read in her basal, but couldn't have answered one question about them. Instead, she was in a kind of stupor. What did her teacher mean? Her only comment that some people didn't know when to stop. At the cafeteria, Nina sat at her place on the fold from the wall bench, opened her bologna and cheese sandwich, looked at it, wondered for the umpteenth time. She was confused. Why Miss Johnson hadn't been as happy as Nina had anticipated, hadn't made a fuss, hadn't asked a question, only said what she said, and now why was Nina feeling embarrassed? Why? She didn't know. Why was having a baby sister a bad thing? When the lunch bell rang, Nina rewrapped the wax paper around her sandwich, put it back in the brown bag. She'd take it home. Nina didn't even take the chocolate cookie from her lunch bag. The cafeteria teacher blew the whistle, and table after table of pupils lined up for recess. Usually Nina would have been among the first so that she could get a swing. She usually loved the back and forth, up and down motion, like the child in the Stevenson poem who was seeing far and wide. But not today. Nina had often wondered why. Why there were only 4 swings for all those kids. That day, Nina didn't care which tightwad had made that decision. Nina didn't care that everyone surrounded the girl who brought a Barbie doll to school. Nina didn't notice there was an empty swing. Nina just leaned against the red brick wall. The wind had died down, and she could feel the sunshine on her face. Maybe she would just walk away. Walk, keep walking anywhere to get away. But Nina knew she couldn't do that, knew it was wrong, knew her parents would be worried about her. When the bell rang to indicate recess was over, she lined up amid her laughing, shouting, pushing classmates. Nina would do her handwriting sheet, would half listen to students who read a paragraph after paragraph from their social studies book, and was glad when the dismissal bell rang. Putting on her coat, she went to meet her sisters near the crossing guard, walked home with them, her older sisters asking why she had such a long face, but didn't pursue it when Nina shrugged her shoulders. She only waved at her neighbor, Mrs. Zink, who had been standing by her mailbox. and followed everyone through the front door of their house. Nina put her school bag down and went to look at her baby sister in the crib. There she was on her back, blankets somewhat snug, lips pursed in a smile. Nina smiled back at her, brushed strands of dark hair to the side, asked her how her day had been, and was rewarded with a baby noise. It made her feel fortunate, at peace. And Nina knew that no matter what anyone else said, there was nothing on earth that could have been better than having another sister. The end. Thank you for visiting with us today. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to this podcast and share it with everyone you know. Return next week for another story from Nina's World. This story was written and read by Christine McKee, with gratitude to Dr. Ethel Ratkin of Bucks County Community College for editorial consultation and encouragement. Additional heartfelt support from family, friends, and members of my writing groups. Technical support was provided by Mr. Dan Tarrant of Personally Catholic. Sound engineering by Mr. Andrew Kimlock of AK Productions. May you embrace peace in your heart, in your home, and in your world.